T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right. Hey, everyone. You are now tapped into the coolest reptile podcast in the world. This is Krista coming to you live for the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. So if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, leave a comment. We are now 7 days a week with shows from all across the species, chondros, monitors, ball pythons, new and upcoming breeders, everything that you can imagine. So lots of knowledge being spread. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can keep informed about everything that's going on the network. So I'm just going to go ahead and go straight into some sponsors for the evening. So we got none other than Clutch, written by those at Canova in summer especially. I use this for my own breedings and to keep track of all my pairings, all the animals in my collection. I really have a fantastic time using it. I think it's really user-friendly, very efficient, very effective. Probably one of my favorite features is showing the percentage of which codoms or which genes are in your collection as I'm adding new ones, kind of saying, okay, where do I have a lot of codoms at, where maybe I just don't have that many in. So I like that quite a bit. And then we have also coming to you from RGI, or Rare Genetics Incorporated, with your shed testing. This has, as we can all agree, has completely changed the outlook of the breeding and being able to shed test on knowing what animals you have in your collections, being able to keep fewer animals, work more dedicated projects. So definitely take this into account when you're planning your breedings, knowing that shed testing is offered, especially RGI. Reach out to them if you're doing in bulk. They can come up with the best pricing for you. Then we have coming to you from Blake's Exotic Feeders, doing homegrown, really high quality quail. So if you're needing quail for your animals, don't hesitate to reach out, let him know that you're coming from the Trap Top Network, and he'll get you squared away with the best quail that you can find for your animals. We all care deeply about our animals and want to feed them the best high quality food source that we can. So it's really important to get that from places like Blake. And then we also have the COCO Dude. You can get COCO, the chipper, online. You can use TrapFam24, I believe, and get some percentage off your order. This is the only COCO that I can use personally. I'm allergic to a lot of the other types of COCO out there, so this is the only one I can really use. So I highly recommend. I use it obviously myself, like I just said, and then I've tried some of the other products, but this one is the one I like the most. You can get, I like the ones that's already kind of pre-made that you can just kind of open up and put it in, and it's already soaked and kept the humidity well. So that is my favorite. And then, of course, go to USARK, sign up for their membership, their yearly membership. They really need high numbers. So we are, as a reptile community, really banded together. So it's really important that we go to the legislation through USARK to be able to fight for our rights to keep these wonderful animals. So the more people, the better. It's a really quick and easy process to get signed up. So highly recommend that. All right, and I am back. So we are really excited to have our guest come kind of last minute, and we'll get into that. Before, I just want to give a little bit of updates. I am getting a mic, so I'm waiting on a few extra parts to get that in, but I'm really excited to get this turned on, make the quality a little bit better for you guys to hear me every week, and just going to keep getting better and better. As far as what I've got going on in my own projects, I just had my second clutch of ball pythons hatched out. They're in shed right now. The very first clutch I had, they got their second meal today. So I know these are little things, but it's really, really exciting to just see things progress. And then I got one in the incubator, another girl that is well on her way. I'm not going to jinx or anything, but hopefully she goes. So with that, I'm going to say hello to those in the live chats before bringing our guest on. So we got Shane from Above All Scales. Thanks for coming out. Travis, what's good, everyone? How you doing? We have Cody from Morph Krings. How you doing, Cody? Hope you're doing well. We got James. Thanks for coming up every week. Really, really means a lot to me. We got Scott from Noble Family Fauna. Thanks for coming in. We got Nick from the Reptile Pueblo. What's up, Nick? Hope your evening, Sunday night's going well. Joni from Gold Coast Balls. Thanks for coming out. Dan, how's it going, Dan? JD, how you doing? Thanks for coming out. H&H Pythons. Thanks for coming out tonight, guys. Trap Talk Vlogs. Thanks, MJ. Yep, second clutch down. Got another one to go. So it's awesome. And Snowy Dragons. Evening, everyone. Thanks for all coming out. Now we're going to bring out our guest, Miss Acacia. How are you?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on. I'm good. Killing it.
Awesome. No, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this last minute, honestly. It's kind of had a cancellation day, but it worked out because you had reached out to me yesterday and was like, hey, I really want to be on the show. And I was like, awesome. I'd love to have you on the show. I kind of looked and I was pretty booked up until end of September, beginning of October. So I was like, okay, I'll put you on. I'll reach out, a little bit closer once you know your schedule. And then, yeah, I had a last minute cancellation this afternoon. I reached out and you responded and hey, we got you on tonight. So I can't thank you enough for that. I really appreciate that.
Hey, I know that last minute changes kind of suck, but I'm stoked. It worked out for me. So, happy to be here.
Yeah. So how has your weekend been?
Weekend. Pretty good, actually. Had a birthday party last night. The weather hasn't been too crappy. I just cut a clutch today. So, good day all around.
Awesome day. How'd that go? How many eggs and what was the pairing?
So it's my second clutch ever. I'm only 2-3 years into this. So it's a little bit basic, but it's just a butterhead pied to a visual pied male. And I didn't know this when I got her. She was the third snake I had gotten when I decided to start accumulating snakes for the breeding thing. And I didn't realize till after I bought her that butter pieds are white. And I was like, oh, crap. But it's all good. I wanted to incorporate pied into my pairings anyway. And the more that I have of them, kind of mixed in there, probably the better. But she was great. She's been awesome since I got her. She eats great, she grows great, she's active, she's social. And she did her breeding job perfectly well, probably a little too well, honestly. She kind of went off food a little too early. I wanted to put more weight on her because she is a young female. She's only 3, so it was her first time breeding ever. And she got a little too excited, I think. She was, raring to go, and she only like a couple months into breeding, she stopped eating. And then I think also she kind of ovulated a little early too. So I was kind of concerned about that. And at first it seemed like the clutch was fine. 6 healthy looking eggs. There's actually a picture of them on my Instagram. And they looked like they were going to be perfect. And I was like, oh, wow, it's actually pretty good for a first time female. No problems. Like a week later, one of them immediately started to die. Like it started to grow mold. And I was like, oh, crap. And I reached out to a bunch of other breeders. Like, what can I do? How do I save it? And I started putting like the foot powder and stuff on it, to try to subdue the mold. But the egg just started rapidly like dying. Like it was blatantly obvious. It wasn't just a little bit of mold. It was like that egg was doomed. Yeah. And she did kind of sneak up on me. She laid, I think, either early in the morning or the middle of the night. So the eggs were pretty stuck together by the time I saw that she had laid. So because I'm inexperienced, I didn't try to separate them because I was like, I'm going to damage them. And I should have, because now the adjacent other eggs that are connected to that dead egg are kind of discolored. So I was concerned about that. But it looks like, as of right now, all the babies look okay. They look alive. They look like they've developed, at least the 5 that are in, otherwise good-looking eggs. One of them turned kind of green. I was worried about that. I was like, oh, did that one die? But it's not dead yet. So, and it's day 55. So should be okay. Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like it went pretty well. Yeah, I've seen where other breeders have had, like, they've kept moldy eggs specifically in the clutch because they don't, I've seen different things about it, but I've seen that most of the times it doesn't spread to the, like, it, just because it's touching, the other one's not going to become adjacent. Like, I've seen breeders purposely leave the moldy egg in there to show that, hey, even though this egg goes bad, if it's touching the other 2, it's not going to make the other ones go bad. So other people in the chat, if you have similar experiences, feel free to share those too. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end for questions. So yeah, feel free to ask some questions. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. How many babies did you say?
So 5 that are currently alive that I can see.
5. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and 3 of them look to be visual pieds from what little bit I could see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Already hitting the recessives. Yeah, and I mean, I'm starting out with this too, but it's all learning kind of opportunity. So there was a lot thrown kind of at you in the beginning. So the fact that you're kind of working through that, seeing the steps of the ovulation, the locking, the prelay shed, it's all kind of a step-by-step learning and not trying to freak out. And yeah. I had one girl, she was like 3 weeks overdue, and I was starting to get like, all right, where's the eggs at? But then she did her thing and laid. So they know what they're doing. So.
Oh man, yeah, my first female, Lucille, and she's 17, so she had her first clutch ever last year, and like I knew she was going to be fine. I wasn't worried about her, but she strung me along. She took 9 months to get this clutch together. 9 months. She gave me 9 healthy eggs, which is great. But like she could not have waited longer. She's like, no, this is like my only chance. Like I've been waiting to have eggs, and I'm finally having eggs. I'm gonna do this right. I'm gonna take my time, and she did, and and it worked out great. She's just like, I was like, God, Lucy, stop making me wait, woman.
Yeah, if you need patience in this game, without it, it's if you don't have it, you will get it with getting it. So. Yeah, 9 months. That's kind of a long time. It's hard to know because you don't use ultrasound or no?
No, I honestly have no expensive equipment whatsoever. I am on a budget. I have another business, and this is kind of just meant to be like a sort of a side hustle. I have multiple of those, like, so I say that, but so I haven't invested any enormous sum of money in any one purchase. Like altogether, it's thousands of dollars, but my racks are only a few $100 each. My snakes are $300 to $600 each. Like I haven't, and ultrasounds are at least $2,000. I'm sure someday they'll become more available to the general public, but as of right now, they're a little bit out of my single purchase price range.
For
sure.
That makes sense? For sure. No, exactly. No, I think it's something you kind of build up to. I've kind of gotten a little bit lucky because I work out of that office that a long time ago. I was able to kind of borrow it and check. So that's kind of have that at my disposal, I guess, for that one time. But yeah, definitely have to kind of build up to it for sure and know how to spend your money on the animals, the equipment. It's a lot up front, which I don't think a lot of people really realize.
Yeah, it's for like, and I was in no hurry, I was okay, like getting snakes, selecting them one at a time, raising them up, because I'm not in a hurry because I have other revenue streams, and I make my own schedule for everything. So I was, just going to do it all very carefully, methodically, strategically. And like, I'm in no rush. Like I would never buy someone else's collection, or anything like that in order to just start, popping out babies at a rapid pace. And having only one for as long as I have, like, I also don't want to overwhelm myself with the amount of care that would be involved going from 1 to 20 to 40 to, 100. That what happens to a lot of people when they start out, they just don't know how much effort it's going to be.
Correct.
Once the numbers pile up.
Yes. Nope. I completely agree with that. It's major planning because it's just exponential growth at that point. Once you start having eggs and keeping them back, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows, and you have to kind of determine, okay, how big do you want it, or what products do you want to do. So yeah, it's definitely good that you have that kind of mindset on planning for sure. So what kind of got you to where you're at now with the reptiles? Like, kind of tell us your story or your history.
So as far as, I mean, I've always been, much like yourself, an indiscriminate animal lover. I've always like I have a few passions, health and fitness, which goes along with like active outdoorsy stuff, animals and nature, and then like fine art, which is my other business, and which that one's actually doing pretty well, which kind of gave me confidence as to that I could do this as a business as long as I was careful and took my time, that I could make it some sort of a, success, at least as a side hustle. But animals had always been my passion. I always kept some kind of animal, but it is in my nature to do one at a time because I like to give my animals optimal care and all of my attention. And I like, not that it's like a cripple or anything, but I do have diagnosed ADHD. So sometimes dividing my attention and remembering everything and focusing and using my energy wisely is very difficult when I'm overwhelmed. I shut down and I'm just like, I have so much to do. I can't do literally any of it. So I've held off on, the idea of collecting any animals or even breeding for the longest time. When I got Lucy, when she was a yearling, 16 years ago, I was like, that's really cool. I would love to breed someday. And I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off until only the last few years, because I was like, oh, that's a lot of like equipment and money. And like, I don't know if I can handle that many animals. But I've always been an animal lover. And, I've always had her and I've always loved her. Terrific personality. She's been great. She's like one of my rocks, not like literally a pet rock, but, a rock in my life. So she's a good girl. And the species is so endearing. I don't care what people say when they say, oh, ball pythons are boring. Like, I don't think that. I appreciate chill, down to earth animals that like aren't in a hurry to, get anywhere, do anything, spend energy. Like ball pythons get it. They're like, I don't need to move that fast, so I'm not gonna, I don't need to eat every day, so I'm not gonna, or even every week. They know what's up. They don't use their energy unless they have to.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate that. And of course, their demeanor, their disposition, they're sweet as hell, they're very tolerant and they're gorgeously colorful. Now, me being a fine artist, I'm very like visually stimulated by things. Like I watch movies instead of read. I know a lot of people would chastise me for that, but I like to take in things through my eyes. So I just like adore the colors, the patterns, the fact that there is something for everyone and that you can kind of predict and, kind of do the math in your head of when you combine this combination with this combination, these patterns with these colors, that the result might be something like this and that, color mix. It's like color mixing to me, which comes very naturally. So I love that. I did, the primary reason that I started breeding when I did is just that my life just became stable enough. The other business is doing well. I had resources, a little bit of space to get started. My last place, which we just moved out of and just moved into a new place, which is bigger, it didn't have enough space for more than a few enclosures in a single rack. So I knew I was going to start, get young snakes, raise them up. And then when we move and have more space, I can really kind of pick up the pace a little bit, which is what happened. So now I have all of the racks and enclosures that I'm going to need for the next few years, to do my kind of slow and steady growth and have this be kind of more what I want it to be.
Awesome.
And sorry, I know I'm rambling.
No, this is part of it. Keep going. Yeah, you're great.
I'm trying to thoroughly answer the question. It was actually the reason that we got our first male for Lucy is because my adoptive son, who's now 14, for one of his birthdays, he wanted a snake because he thought I had a snake. He loves her. He thinks she's great too. And he's like, I have a snake. And I was like, a ball python is actually great for kids because you know how kids are. They have a short attention span, right? They like if something that requires a lot of time and energy, like a dog or like even just like a hamster is like daily care. And it's very difficult to convince a kid or a teenager to keep up with that kind of care, So I was like, actually a snake would probably be a really good idea. And we were originally going to get him a hognose because like I love various species. I think they're adorable. And, ease of care was, enough. And he seemed interested in it. And, but I couldn't find any for some reason. Now, this was a few years ago. Like I couldn't find anybody that was selling them. And I didn't know about MORPH Market at the time. But my local shops, nobody had them. I went to New England Reptile. They didn't have any at the time. I know a lot more people have them now, but then I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign. Maybe now is the time to start breeding. So we got a male and it's technically his snake, but I, use it for breeding purposes. So that's how that started.
Okay. And that male was the one that just sired your first clutch, right?
My first clutch. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That's wild that you had the one Lucy for that many years too.
Yeah. Yeah, I dedicate to my animals. So I do everything very carefully, and I didn't even acquire her until I had done months of research first. I don't feel comfortable caring for any animal that I don't thoroughly understand, at least as much as I can reading about it. I know hands-on experience will teach you so much more,
For
but
sure.
I want to know things inside and out because I don't want to be too surprised by anything.
Right.
And
I mean, I think that's the best way to do it when you're dealing with a live animal, right? You want to be prepared. You want to have your kind of vet in place, like just in case stuff happens. You want to give that animal the best quality life. So planning what you've been doing is the way to do it. So fantastic.
yeah.
So how many snakes do you have now? You say?
Currently I have 12, breeders. There's another breeder that I plan to get next year, but I currently have 12 that are either growing up or are currently actively breeders. And then I obviously, with the 5, eggs as they hatch, there will be 5 more offspring, one of which, maybe 2 of which I'll hold back. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
I don't know if I got the genes that I was looking for, but yeah, so again, it's a slow burn, but let's say 12 right now.
Okay. And what would you say, like, what collection size do you want in the long term, or do you see this ever becoming like a full-time business, or do you want to keep it as a side hustle for the existing future?
So my other business occupies about half of my week. It makes good money for the hours that I put in, but it's about half of my week. So I imagine that this will occupy the other half. I already work for myself, and I already make my own schedule, so it can take as much or as little time as I kind of really want to set it up to be. But I'd like to do at least a few clutches a year, maybe 3 to 5 clutches a year. Right now, I have the space available to have 3 full-size clutches for the next few years, and I know that seems very small. But because of my other goals and the way that I want to operate this business and the things that I want to focus on, smaller numbers is so much better. I don't know if it would be possible if somebody on a larger scale, such as, Justin Kabilka or something, could like dedicate the time to do what I'm trying to do, because it's very involved and it's not super efficient. So it's best I keep it small, I think, for what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are some of those goals that you think are better attained with a smaller collection, you think?
So I'm doing something that to the best of my knowledge, no one else at least has publicly announced that they're doing, which is that I am not only breeding for, appearance, but also behavior. So I am not only selecting my breeders, I am going to do some line breeding. So I've chosen each individual breeder based on that they are one of the best visual examples of their morph, because I think that preserving morph quality, amplifying contrast pattern and color and everything, and color preservation and longevity is super important to me. So all of my breeders have that, for the genes that I've chosen, but also that their personality is something that I also want to pass on. And I think that we've found in all species that have been bred consistently long-term in captivity, you can always breed for some level of behavior, right? Some level of, cognition or adaptability or something like that. Now, obviously, it's going to be more limited when we're dealing with something as simplistic as pythons, to the best of our knowledge. They're mostly instinct driven. Their emotions and other, cognitive abilities are somewhat limited. So, but I think, and I theorize, and I'm going to have to prove this, obviously, I'm going to have to, back this up with actual doing. I believe that things like feeding reliability, stress response, willingness to interact, likelihood to exhibit fear reactions, things like that. I think that these are all things that can be influenced by selective breeding over time. So I'm kind of trying to do proof of concept. Now, Lucille, obviously, I've had her a very long time, but she's a very tolerant snake. She's never had feeding issues. She's never really exhibited serious signs of stress, such as balling up, striking. She's vocal. She definitely, she'll communicate with me and tell me, when she'd rather not be touched, but that's fine. Snakes give us so little information to read them anyway, so I kind of like that she sometimes makes a noise and, huffs at me when she's not in the mood. But other than that, she's absolutely terrific. And, she's active. She explores her enclosure. She's the only snake that I have that is in a 4x2x2 because she's the biggest. I have another custom enclosure that I made that's a 30-inch, I think, a 30-inch by a 1.5 feet. And I have another, that's Alice's enclosure. She just laid this clutch and she loves to climb, so I wanted to give her a little bit more. The other snakes are in tubs, but they're the largest tubs that I could find, basically. I decided to go with animal plastics because I like that the tubs are clear. Kayla talked a lot about this in the last episode.
Right.
The tubs are clear, so I want the snakes to be able to see, have light. They all have substrate, they all have hides, and they also have some kind of interactive furnishings, leaves, sticks, branches, logs, things like that. Whatever I can fit in there and still give them ample crawling room, to move around. Trying to kind of find a healthy middle ground. It's difficult because I know as a breeder, you got to be efficient, and, racks are kind of the way to go if you want to have any kind of numbers, but they are kind of limited as far as height and space and everything. So I'm trying to give the snakes as much as I physically can while also having, sort of an effective breeder setup. But that allows me to see how the snakes interact with their environments, how they respond to being exposed to light and movement and things like that, and how they interact with, enrichment or furnishings in their enclosure. And that'll tell me a lot about, say when they go into pet homes, what kind of pet they're going to be. Are they going to be more of a ground dweller or a tree dweller, right? Are they going to be, more reactive? Are they going to be defensive? Are they going to be, sort of not excited, but interested when somebody opens the tub to come out and not necessarily, love on that person, but like explore the world around them rather than hide from it. So I'm seeing these traits in Lucy's offspring. Not all of them. I did hold back the 2 with the best personalities. Thankfully, there were also 2 with good genes, good visuals. And, I obviously was very transparent to the people that I rehomed the other babies to, told them everything I could about their personality. I did a lot of hand raising and working with them and getting them to relax, reliably eat, not be, one of them was kind of striky. One of them came out with a bit of an attitude, but I worked with her and she settled down. So, and that's another thing too, is I found what level of interaction, sort of brings them back down to earth and gets them to relax and realize that we are not a threat. If I'm talking too much, just cut me off.
Oh, no, this is all fascinating. Hey, do not worry. No, keep going. It's very fascinating. Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, good. So, I did have to work with a couple of them. A couple of them were kind of nervous. Again, one of them had a bit of an attitude. A couple of them were what I call neutral. And then a couple of them were ideal candidates. So I did get this one snake that was, and this is the one adult that I attempted to buy, and this is why I don't buy adults anymore. She was a 5-year-old. She had been traditionally rack raised, in an opaque tub in a typical breeder setup, which is obviously like, they don't get the light and the movement and everything. And the only, interaction that they get is usually when the tub is opened to be fed or cleaned. So that was just her understanding of the world. And she was nervous outside of that setting. So that became immediately apparent when she came into my home, when I wanted to put her in like a bit more of an actual enclosure. I had a vision cage at the time, vision cages. They're those gray PVCs with the glass front opening. I put her in one of those to see how she'd do. She was very uncomfortable, very, very uncomfortable. She was defensive. And she, while in the enclosure, when you tried to open it, she would try to defend herself. She was beautiful. She was a beautiful Candino, which is something that I want to work with. But she was so afraid, and like I can't blame her. She wasn't used to what I was exposing her to. She was an adult. She had her life. She had what she knew and what she was familiar with. So she wasn't ready for that. And so I decided, I was like, you know what? Like, she's beautiful, she's healthy, she's stunning. But I was like, if I'm going to stick to my guns, I can't use her as a breeder. And then maybe she was different when she was a hatchling. I don't know. All I know is the kind of interaction she had with me. So I did find her a pet home to go into. So she's officially a retired breeder. Now she has a nice, a nice enclosure and a nice home where, it doesn't matter if she has a bit of an attitude, if she wants to be left alone. She just, now she has her home and her owner's very happy with her. But yeah, I'm selecting snakes that are better adjusted, that are not freaked out by human interaction. Again, that eat well. She didn't eat super well too because she was stressed out. So
yeah. And with that, because I also had an adult come and was stressed, and she came from another similar rack setup. So the older ones, I do agree, take some time to get used to the new environment, especially if they're coming from a different part of the country, right? They have to adjust to differences in barometric pressure. I guess my question is too with that, like, how long did you give her to adjust? Like, say she did adjust, and do you believe that they can adapt over time, and that would then be a favorable trait, right? If she was coming from something different and was able to adapt to yours, or did you just decide, no, there's no way she can adapt?
I gave her about 6 months of my usual routine. And now I certainly could have dedicated a lot more time, and I probably could have brought her down a degree. But what I find, and I've been working with ball pythons a long time, not just my own, but I actually I worked at a lot of different pet shops and stuff. I worked for New England Reptile Distributors. Kevin, the owner, is actually a friend of my family. So I've known him a very long time. So I've had a lot of interactions with ball pythons, as well as the ones that I, have raised myself, and, Lucy and everything. And what I have found is that, as if anybody has produced a clutch, they all have a different baseline out of the egg, right? They're not all the same personality wise. So I think that they start at a certain level, and then you can improve or worsen it by a certain percentage. I don't think that you can bring a snake from 0 to 100. And I don't think that you can bring a snake from 100 all the way down to 0. I think that maybe if they start, say, neutral, 50%, right? 50% chill, 50% defensive, whatever. I think you can maybe bring them up about 20%, maybe 30%. With proper exposures, gentle choice-based handling, maybe in enriched environments, low stress, not too much, not too little handling, that sort of thing. I think that they can be sort of adapted a certain amount, but I don't personally believe that if a snake is born super tense, super defensive, or, God forbid, aggressive, which is not common at all, and just like very particular and very resistant, I don't know that they will ever be that super chill, super calm, like pet snake, because some things are genetic. Some things are inherently genetic and will influence them to a degree because of that. Like some snakes, it's crazy. I've seen like some ball pythons, like especially in some videos where breeders are like showing off some of the nice morphs that they have, and some of them are huffing so loud, like hissing so loud, they sound like a rattlesnake. I've never personally physically seen a ball python do that. I imagine that, like, I don't think it's the environment that did that to that snake. I don't think that breeder was a dick to it. I just think that snake was just, for some reason, maybe because of its lineage, or maybe just because like some wires got crossed during development, it just came out an asshole. Like, and I don't know how much, like, proper enclosure, gentle interaction, or careful handling or anything could ever completely eliminate that in that snake, is my theory. And based on my experience, my belief, and I could very well be proven wrong after, however many years of doing this. But that's kind of what I'm going off of. That's why I'm choosing, how they come out of the egg, snakes with specific baselines, either neutral or what I call a green baseline, which means that they show desirable behavior traits, to choose as my breeders.
Okay. Do you document this, or is this like, how do you kind of track? Because it's probably hard to keep track of, right, of all the babies. So I'm assuming there's some sort of actual marking that you do here in your own sort of care sheet or paperwork. Go into that.
Yeah, okay. My memory is terrible, but this is the thing about having a small number. If I had a larger number, I couldn't do this. So yeah, I am taking notes and keeping track of like how they come out versus after a few months of, feeding, interacting, certain exposures, how that affects them and at what rate they improve, or if they don't improve at all. So yeah, I'm keeping notes, and I'm going to have to continue with that in order for this to, be effective and to keep track of what it is that I'm doing. But at the very least, at face value, I have the parents of the offspring. I know their behavior. I know their tendencies. I've probably been raising them up for a few years, again, because all of the breeders that I bought young, either as yearlings or younger. So I'm going to know that snake from when it's young all the way up until when it's breeding age adult, which for me is males older than 2, females, 2.5 to 3 years old. I'm giving them the extra half a year to a year before I start breeding them too. Because I know some people start, females at like 1.5 years or something. So I'm choosing not to do that. But so I have these snakes for quite a good long time, and I know them pretty well by the time that they're producing offspring. So I can compare that snake's behavior and tendencies to that of their offspring. And then I can kind of see, okay, what passed down, what didn't, what percentage of the clutch is like their parents, and what percentage is something completely different. If that makes sense.
It makes sense. Like, what morphs are you working with? And say, it sounds like you're choosing more for the behavior. So say you don't hit the morph you're looking for, then I'm assuming you're going for more the behavior base, which could, yes, improve the behavior, but not so much the genetic, just the visualness visual
Right.
genetics would say that.
Yeah, so this is why I totally understand why nobody else wants to do this, because I will have to, if it comes down to it, I will have to sacrifice, a beautiful morph if it does not have those desirable behavior traits as a breeder. So I am prioritizing. I'm trying to prioritize behavior over visual expression, but the goal is hopefully, right, that the best looking snakes will have desirable behavior traits. That's my hope. But only time and luck will tell. I was very lucky with with my first clutch and those 9 babies. I had a lot to choose from. The all gene animal happened to have the absolute best personality. Lucky me, right? She's insane. Like, it's incredible. I've never seen a ball python behave this way. And now I know how to handle them in such a way that I don't stress them out or make them worse or piss them off or like ruin the progress that we've made. So I do a lot of choice-based handling. I don't ever grab from above. I just, come from underneath. I don't grip them firmly when they're moving around. I let them move freely with gentle manipulation. So like, I don't make handling unpleasant. You know what I mean? I kind of try to, the goal is to show them that even though I'm this large, scary, hairless predator, I'm not actually a threat. I'm not going to do them any harm. And I think that they are intelligent enough to learn that, to associate this, big, dumb, scary ape thing is big and scary, and I am quite tiny, but hasn't hurt me yet, right? Nothing bad has happened when the tub's been opened, when I've been taken out or moved to another place, or when I'm being fed or when the water's being changed. Nothing bad happens. And I can see them kind of, the gears turning over time where they're like, they figure that out and then they become indifferent to you. And I think that's a good place to be. Like, I don't think we can ever earn their love, obviously, and affection, but I think that we can reach indifference, comfort, copability, things like that. So that's kind of the premise I'm operating off of. And then if they start at an even better baseline, with an even more open mindset and more open personality, more social, we'll call it traits, a desire to interact, whatever that means for them, be it like just stretching out or exercise or elevating to a higher level, because they want to crawl up you or something like that. It has nothing to do with you, that they want to interact with you, but something about what you give them or what you offer them is somehow desirable to them, And it could just be the stimulation, the mental stimulation or the physical activity, which, even if you don't agree with handling your ball pythons or giving them, climbables or whatever, it's good for their muscle tone. It's good for exercise. It makes them stronger. They develop their muscles and bones and everything are stronger. So there's, nothing wrong with encouraging activity, at the very least.
Okay. I've never heard. It's interesting. I'm trying to process it too and think, at the same time how that could. Well, because like for me, if I hatch out, I don't know, whatever, confusion, hurricane, holy grail animal, and it's an ass, I'm not gonna sell that animal, right? That's why it's hard to look at. But you're coming at it from a different angle, which I think is appealing to a lot of people out there. I'm assuming you're more kind of geared towards the pet level, correct? Or are you also wanting to sell to breeders too?
I'm trying to do both. So to answer your question, real quick, I'm working with various morphs. I'm going to have a couple of pairings that are for pet keepers, more on the affordable level, and I'm going to do a couple that are higher end. Just right off the bat, I don't do clown. Clown does not age well. I'm going for a good, retention of visual quality. So morphs that age well are more in my wheelhouse. I have, I actually love dark morphs too and high contrast. So I have things like mahogany and GHI, obviously pied. I have, forgetting what the frick I have. Oh yeah, blackhead, Mojave calico, things like that. Those are the incomplete dominants that I'm working at, because they do improve like contrast and, visual appeal. They thicken pattern, they age well. And then as far as recessives, I have another Candino, younger Candino female that I got. So I have plans for that. That's way off in the future. I'm planning like 10 years ahead for that, because that's going to be a more complicated thing. And then I did just recently buy into Monarch. So I love Monarch. Beautiful. So I have a couple of het monarchs that, again, they're babies, but raising up. So I'm not averse to like the more valuable, desirable morphs, as long as I like them. And I think that they are visually stunning and that they age well, and that, if I can get into it in some way that I can afford. I was very fortunate. The male came from Tyler's Toxic Balls. and they were selling him for a very reasonable price. So I was very thankful for that. And the female came from John Feely from Feely's Clutch.
Okay. Yeah.
He was on I forget what podcast. He was on a podcast recently, but anyway, so I got the female from him, and that was a Mojave het monarch. Both beautiful animals, great examples of their morphs. And so far, great eaters, chill personality. So again, winning, lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you go about that when you're choosing buying animals? Do you ask the breeder what their personality is, and then if it's not, you just keep looking and find one that matches both the morph and the personality you're looking for? Like, what questions do you ask the breeder when you're doing that?
Yeah, and of course, understand, like, I feel bad asking these questions because I don't want to waste anybody's time and I don't want to annoy anybody. But I am asking them, like, how are they with feeding? How are they with handling? Can you do me a favor and spend a little time with them and, tell me how they do? And thankfully, everybody's been very nice. Everybody has been very willing to work with me on that so far. I try not to be pushy and I try not to ask too much. But I am doing a little bit of that preemptive questioning just to get a feel for what I'm dealing with. Again, I'm acquiring them young, so I know no matter what, they're pretty malleable, most likely, unless they're, again, born just this total, like, rattlesnake type asshole. So I've been very fortunate, but, like that, I did spend $600 on that 5-year-old female that arrived, and I sold her for $200. Like, I took a loss on it, and I didn't want to, and understand that that's not, financially ideal. And again, why I understand why nobody else wants to do this, because I'm taking a risk, and it's always taking a risk, because I could ask these questions and the breeder could lie to me, and I could end up getting a snake that is nothing like what they describe. And I know that happens to people. I'm trying, and I'm taking the chance, and I'm kind of taking one for the team, basically.
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like, yes, there is that adjustment period, right? When they do come to you, they may not be like what they were with breeder, and that's up to an individual. So it's very individual based, let alone.
Yeah. And now obviously I have to give them the adjustment period too, because I know they're going to be more afraid immediately. I know that I'm putting them in a different environment than they were in before. Even though it's still rack, it's going to be a different kind of rack. And they might be exposed to light where they weren't before, and there's going to be all kinds of other scary, unfamiliar things in their tub that there wasn't before. So I am patient and understanding of those first few weeks. You really can't judge. You got to give them time to adjust, and and I don't push them too hard. I give them that time.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead.
I've been lucky so far.
So far, the behavior is matched. Okay. Hopefully, so.
Yeah. With one exception, I have my blackhead Mojave female. She's nervous. She's not striky. She's not defensive. She's not huffy. She does still do a little bit of the bawling behavior. So she's even though she's an adult and she's going to be ready to breed technically this fall, she's still bawling. Like, she's still nervous and uncomfortable. She doesn't lash out though. I can touch her just fine, and she does, and she'll eventually relax and unball. But that's not a desirable behavior trait. But I wouldn't call it a red baseline. So I'm working with her to see how it goes, and more than likely she will probably be replaced by one of her better offspring. So I'll give her a shot, because again, she's not out of the question. But I'm probably not going to keep her and breed her again if she, gives me an offspring that I want, that I can replace her with.
I see. Okay. You've kind of hit on a little bit the green versus the red baseline. So can you kind of set it a little bit spread out, but more distinctly, what is in the green and like what's in the red? And is there so many different red things you do and then they're out, or if they just kind of move over into the red, you kind of will replace them or move them out or something?
If I see any consistent red baseline behaviors, especially after the first month that I've had them, they're probably going to be not an option. So to me, a green baseline is things like being very forward with you. So you open the tub, they come out of the tub, they poke their head out. They're not immediately afraid of the tub being opened, right? So that's a good sign. They eat reliably. So basically, if you wiggle the rat the wrong way, they don't recoil into themselves. So that is not an ideal behavior. So they eat reliably, and nothing really stops them from eating, including a change in their environment or a change of tub, or being taken out or handled. If that doesn't stop them from doing their feeding that week, desirable behavior. And then obviously, like, things like not hissing or huffing, no jerking no jerking motion. So like you can touch them without them overreacting, you know, like flinging backwards and recoiling into themselves, you know, tightening up into a quick ball, striking, things like that. So like a snake that is relaxed and okay with touch, even more so that they seem so unfazed by it. They almost appear to seek it. They're not really, but they're so unfazed by it that they come to you almost like they want it. My girl Honeybee, who is again the my favorite holdback from my first clutch, when I open the tub, she's just right out up in my face. She's very forward and she kind of initiates interaction with me. Sometimes she won't let me close the tub. She's like, no, I'm coming out. So she just, and she's excellent. Nothing stops her from eating. She's growing excellently. She has terrific color, everything like that. So like that's kind of like, basically think of the chillest snake. That's green baseline. You know, no problems, no concerns. Neutral baseline is average. You see this in most snakes, especially most hatchlings. Neutral, normal snake stuff, right? They're a little bit nervous at first. They're a little cautious, but they can eventually chill out once they're shown that there is no actual threat. They eat most of the time. Maybe occasionally they'll like, you know, get a little bit spooked by the prey, you know, and decide to hide instead. Like, no, I'm not eating today. Or like, you know, you touch them and they kind of move their body away, like they do that thing where you're touching them, they're like, oh no, stop it. But they but they don't like push back, they don't flee, you know, really rapidly. They're just kind of, they're like, like I'd really rather not, but they're otherwise fine. Like, you know, they're fine. This is the average ball python, what most of us see, right? Normal ball python behavior. They're shy, you know, they're like sometimes picky, but nothing of major concern. Red baseline is like they are defensively striking. Like they'll like, you know, those snakes that'll strike at the prey but not actually grab it, like they're fighting it off. So they strike at you, or they get ready to strike at you when they see you come into their enclosure because they're trying to keep you away from them. Or they, you know, the kind of snake where like they see movement and then they rapidly tighten into a ball and like defend themselves like they're going to die. And then when you pick them up, they don't relax. They don't unball. They stay tense, huffy, like the kind where you can see them breathing, like they get thicker and thinner, thicker and thinner. So loud huffing, intense stress response. That's what I would consider a red line behavior. Going off of feed because of a small change or a small interruption in their day for many weeks at a time. Trying to think what else. It's like obvious stuff that you would see is like extremely concerning. Yeah, and then, you know, ones that want to do nothing but hide, perpetually hiding to the point that they don't hydrate properly. They don't, you know, scoot about. They don't like poop normally just because they're so focused on hiding. They don't thermoregulate correctly, that all they want to do is just protect themselves and not be eaten, to the point that they ignore their other survival instincts. So that's like, there's two extremes, you know, two like there's very positive, there's very negative, and then there's your average in the middle snakes. And those neutral baselines are not, again, out of the question for me, because there's always that chance that, for one, they can be improved with a little bit of work, or that they will produce offspring that are better than themselves. But probably not going to go the other way.
And then with your collections, you know, on the smaller end, what's your percentage of those that are neutral, green, and red, you would say? I'm assuming the majority is in the neutral, but what percentage you think are on or have been on the red? Because, you know, you've either sold them or maybe don't have them anymore.
So I've only had the one that is the red baseline, and that was that adult Candino, who I sold. Annabelle, who's the blackhead Mojave I was talking about, she's close to red baseline because she is so nervous, to the point that she skips a lot of meals, not all of them. She'll occasionally eat and she'll occasionally participate in normal behaviors, but she definitely prefers to protect herself, but not to the point that it's concerning. So she's like 10% behavior change away from being a red baseline snake to me. But the rest of them I have let's see, most of them are green baseline, I would say. And then like if it's a percentage scale, like 1 to 30% is like red, 31 to 60% whatever is neutral, and then like, you know, whatever beyond that, like 70% to 100% is green line or green baseline. I would say that like 8 out of 10 are green baseline in that upper 30 percentile.
Okay. And with the behavior stuff, because It sounds like you've done a lot of research into it, or where have you learned, what behaviors they exhibit, what to look out for? Is it something you kind of came up on your own, or read books or certain people online?
So everything that I think it might be part of my ADHD. I don't know. I'm a chronic, information consumer.
Mm.
When I decided, especially to start breeding ball pythons, I consumed hours and hours and hours of videos a day. Which is I listen to the Trap Talk podcast like every day, as well as several others.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
and I will for sure say the Trap Talk one is always the most entertaining. So thank you for that. um,
Coolest.
yeah, and but I do a lot of driving around. One of my side hustles that I do in between my other businesses is I do delivery driving. So I'm in the car for hours a day, just listening to reptile podcasts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When I'm at home, like when I wake up and I have my tea and yogurt and stuff, I'm watching a couple of hours of informative videos. Right. I'm always like, if I'm curious about something or to learn something, I'm reading articles. I'm staying up to date on the most recent studies. And whenever there's a documentary or anything, I watch that. So I consume hours of information a day, not necessarily as like an addiction or an obsessive thing, but just because I want to understand everything I physically can by reading, watching, listening, as I can before I actually get the hands-on experience, so that when things happen, I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. Okay, I think I kind of know what to do. Okay, let me try this. Let me research it a little bit more. But okay, like I kind of have an idea of what to do or how to handle it or what's going on. So, and thankfully, because of all the amazing breeders out there, which I have to thank for most of it, they are always showing off their animals. They're always talking about their personal experience. They're always like talking about their strategies and how they started out and talking about their animals and stuff. So I have been able to observe in, real time, hours and hours of other people's animals, the way that they keep them versus the way that they behave, the way that they react to being fed or handled, or what have you, or breeding, the changes that they go through in breeding season. Like there's hours and hours and hours and hours of that content online. So I can observe and I can say, okay, I noticed that most snakes that are kept this way seem to behave in this manner. Okay, I can see that most snakes, like when they go into breeding season, these changes seem to happen, like that sort of thing, and that I also pay attention to the way that breeders touch their snakes. So some breeders, I don't know if you've noticed this, are very aggressive. Like when they pull their snakes apart to kind of show them off, and they're very grabby and they're very rapid with their movements. And I pay attention to how those snakes are adjusted or how they react to handling versus those that are more calm, more chill, more relaxed, less forceful with their snakes, that sort of thing. So like I'm always paying attention to that stuff. Lori Tarini, I watch a lot of her content too. I don't know if you know her.
I don't think so, but I'll look her up for sure. Yeah, it's not
she,
to mine.
she talks a lot about behavior and stuff. She's very, again, into science. I participated in a study that she was coordinating recently and that had to do with ball python behavior. So more, I think, will come out about that. So you'll probably hear about it. It's hopefully supposed to be turned into a documentary, but
Oh,
that's
wow.
probably way in the future.
Huh. Are you allowed to
But,
talk about it? Are you allowed to talk about it, or just wait till it comes out?
no, you can, the study.
Yeah.
I can't talk about all of the details as to like what the parameters were and how we gathered the data, but the goal of the study was to everybody had the same size setup, set up the exact same way. We all had guidelines and images and everything on how we set it up, and we had all different ball pythons from different ages, different genetics, different genders, things like that, different experiences in those enclosures. And we all compared notes as to how they behaved, what in the enclosure they interacted with and when, and like how seasonal changes or time of day and stuff affected their behavior. So it was basically like an enclosure use. That part of the study was like an enclosure use study to discover what they actually want to use in an enclosure and what they use the most and when they're the most active, things like that. So that was kind of the gist of it.
Huh. That's fascinating too. That's interesting. Yeah, I would have to go look that up and see when it comes out, because I'd be interested to see the effects of that and the results. So
Yeah, me too.
And with that, you brought up different morphs. You kind of talked about little morphs that you have. Are there morphs? You said you don't like clown. Are there any other specific ones you're not wanting in particular? Or?
Oh yeah, as a personal choice, and this is and I want to say too, but like with me yammering on about this stuff, I don't want to offend anybody. I'm enclosure neutral, so none of this is to say that like you know, one is better than the other. I think that we know precious little about this species. And I think that if you are doing something, that means that your snakes grow and eat and breed and are free of disease and live a long time. You know, nobody's telling you to change that. I'm just, I have specific goals in mind, so I have to do things a specific way
For
to
sure,
achieve that.
for sure.
And then likewise, with morphs, I have no problem with, you know, whatever kind of morphs people want to breed, as long as they're doing it responsibly, selectively, and mindfully. I personally choose not to work with morphs that have known obvious issues, obviously. So I'm choosing not to breed, say, the spider morph. And that's also a convenience thing, as well as, like, you know, just like not wanting to, you know, produce animals that could have that inner ear deformity that causes the corkscrewing and stuff. But the more animals that you have in your collection that could produce a lethal, you know, lethal combination, like spider to spider is obviously a lethal combo. The more animals that I have in my collection, the more I have to be careful about what I pair. I don't want to have to choose what I'm pairing based on whether or not the babies will just die. Like, that just seems like an inconvenience I don't want to deal with.
Well,
So
especially if it's a small collection, then yeah, you
yeah,
have to be mindful of that. Yeah. So like
yeah.
Black Pastel, same thing. I love it, but you got to be very careful, very mindful, obviously. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I love black snakes, but I'm choosing to use morphs to make black snakes that don't have the kinking problem. So I don't do black pastel or cinnamon as well, because I don't want to worry about that. I obviously don't do scaleless or scaleless head. That was one, like, I'm glad that it was, you know, the whole proof of concept thing. I'm glad they proved it and they figured out you can make a scaleless ball python, but I think it should have stopped there. I don't think that purposefully giving an animal a deformity or, you know, eliminating one of its natural defenses is wise. So I'm not up for scaleless. That's probably the one, like, if you're trying to make scaleless ball pythons, that's the one where I'm like, what are you doing? Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than that, well, now obviously, you know, no caramel, because they have those problems. No desert. What else is there? Problematic morphs. Spot nose. I know that that's not as severe. So basically anything that I know of that has an inherent deformity or problem, or, you know, neurological issue or physical issue or limitation, or that the babies are likely to come out screwed up, I'm not working with any of those morphs. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No, makes sense. Makes sense. Even, yeah, as I have my own collection, trying to determine what genes and what to add and what to add and what not to add. So, yeah, becomes imperative if you're using a very small collection. You're choosing mainly on behavior and, yeah, want to limit the kinking and all that. So, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with none of that. And I don't have the time or the resources or the money to, like, choose, of like the 3 breeders I can use that year, like which ones I can't breed together because of the, you know, the morphs are a risk. Like, I don't have the time for that.
Especially when you're like holding stuff back, right? And you gotta like plan. I think that's a big part of the ball python game, is planning not for just next year, right? But like 3, 4, 5 years down the road. Like, okay, I have this female, but what male am I gonna put to her? Should I buy one or should I just make one? I mean, it depends on obviously your goals and what you want, but planning out your pairings multiple years in advance is what I feel like you should be kind of, it's hard, right, based on the odds you hit, and in your case also going with the behavioral aspect of it too would make it pretty hard, I would think, to
I have to be selective in everything that I'm doing, way too selective, like almost like it's not super profitable for me, I know, to be this selective. Oh, to answer another question that you had, I think it was, and it's related to this, why do breeders care what I'm doing, right? Why would a breeder, you know, come to me specifically if I don't, you know,
right.
I'm not working with all of the top end morphs. I know most people want clown in their projects, and I don't have that, so that's already a detriment to me, right, as far as like my potential client base or customer base. But why do breeders care about what I'm doing? Well, I also theorize, and I think I have good reason to believe, that what I'm doing with behavior and, you know, preparing snakes to be in all kinds of situations and enclosures and to be touched and handled and everything also makes for bulletproof breeders. And what I mean by that is, how many times do you hear a breeder tell a story of like, oh, they moved, or a snake, you know, changed tub size or something like that, or you know, they lost power for a couple days and the temperature dropped and like the females didn't go, or they reabsorbed, or they just decided they weren't having it that year, they just didn't want to breed. Well, if you can breed animals or choose animals that are more indifferent to the changes in their environment, that they are not overwhelmed or stressed by it, or that they don't think it's catastrophic, why would they reabsorb? You know what I mean? Why would they make such a drastic change and say, no, this is not a safe environment for my babies to be brought into, so I'm gonna wait. So a thought I have is, and hopefully, it turns out to be right, that these snakes will also be more likely to be reliable breeders as well as reliable feeders. Breeders, they want their snakes to eat regularly and to
Right.
put on weight and to grow, right? Because bigger, healthier animals produce better clutches. So you also don't want your snakes to go off feed because they're too stressed, or there's a change in their environment, or because you touched them the wrong way, or you wiggled the rat the wrong way. Rats are expensive. Like what's said, like I feed frozen only. I don't want to be throwing rats out because like I wiggled it the wrong way and my snake decided they weren't eating for 3 weeks. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like, to me, if you think of it logically and you think of all of the applications, even though it's a pain in the ass, it can be expensive, it can take a long time, but I think it's a worthy endeavor, at least for someone to try. So I'll take one for the team. I'll give it a shot. I'll let you know how it goes. It's kind of the way that I'm thinking of it.
For sure. I hope it pans out. I mean, of course, it's really frustrating when a breeder does go off food or reabsorbs is the most, I think, frustrating thing for us. And we just kind of turn it to, they know when they're ready, right? But if we can try to limit that, then that would be obviously fantastic. And if they have the genes that we would want, right?
Right. And another point that I'm making, at least with most of my breeders, and I've been able to do it so far with Lucy and Alice, is I handled them the entire time that they were developing. And I limited it when they were gravid, obviously, because I didn't want to cause them physical discomfort. But I handled them the whole time that they were growing, the whole time that they were, building their follicles and everything. I did a lot of, I can't palpate to save my life, but I tried to do a lot of palpating to see if I could kind of feel the difference and feel any of the growth happening. I did not succeed in that. But they tolerated it. They never stopped eating and they never stopped building follicles, and they both successfully laid clutches. So that's another thing I'm kind of doing is like, how much can they, within reason? Like, I think that there is such thing as too much handling. You can absolutely handle a snake too much. A lot of snakes go off feed or get stressed out or develop problems or whatever because of too much handling. I think that like once to twice a week is fine if everything else is going fine. Temperatures are fine. No signs of distress or poor health. They're eating regularly. I think once to twice a week is more than enough, and you don't have to handle them every week. I think handling every day is way too much. I would never bother any of my snakes every day. They need a break. They don't enjoy it. So obviously I'm somewhere in the middle with a lot of things and a lot of topics, but I think that some level of exposure working with them in making well-adjusted snakes, especially if they can be genetically well-adjusted, genetically solid, genetically great feeders, genetically chill. Like, nobody wants to be popped by their snake either. Nobody wants to be bitten either. So reduce the likelihood of that. And I mean, I already know pet keepers, they would love this idea. Pet keepers have probably been waiting for this kind of thing, but not really talking about it, maybe because nobody knew it was possible. They would love for a snake to just be cool and chill, without them really having to work at it. And I think, so again, cut me off from talking too much, but
No. You're doing great. No, keep going. It's interesting. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, you're doing well.
What, has everybody left? Am I boring everybody?
No. There's still people in the chat. No, they're not boring. I haven't seen any questions yet, but I kind of wait till the end and I ask if people have questions. So yeah, but no,
okay. So one of the things that I think is one of the biggest problems that nobody talks about when it comes to ball pythons, and this is an uncomfortable thing to think about. I'm now a breeder myself, right? So something we breeders don't want to think about is the rehoming problem. And what I mean by that is people who get the snake, and this is why, again, I preach research, understand the animal you're going to buy before you buy it. They get the snake, it's not what they expected, they get bored, they rehome it. That's how often does that happen with ball pythons, or worse, they neglect it and it dies.
Right.
I think this is a serious problem. I'm hoping to help in resolving this problem by making snakes that are more appealing for people to keep. Maybe are more interesting, maybe they're more interactive with their enclosure, maybe they don't have to work so hard to earn that animal's trust, right? Or for that animal to be comfortable with them. Because I know that like people are not, they don't mean to be, but they have expectations of their pets. They'll buy their pet and they think, I'm going to love this thing and it's going to love me back. And people are sorely mistaken with pythons. They are not going to love you back. I'm sorry. And I know that breaks your heart. But it's a very one-sided relationship. Like, you know, I go to interact with Lucy or like, you know, clean her poop or something. And she's like, and I'm like, I love you too, baby girl. Like, you know, it's like, leave me alone. But I think that it will help with people's perceptions of snakes and their willingness to work with them, be patient with them, if they show more appealing behaviors and traits, or at least if the pet keeper can kind of lie to themselves a little bit and tell themselves that the snake likes them. And that's not to say that they should tell themselves that the snake loves to be played with and, you know, is like their best friend and they, you know, snake would never want to be without them. I don't think that they should lie to themselves to that degree, but people should at least feel like their animal doesn't hate them. And I think that's not unreasonable, right? And that's probably one of the number one reasons why people rehome their snakes, any species of snake, but, you know, ball pythons particularly, because a nervous ball python that's hiding all the time is not that interesting to look at to a pet keeper. Yeah. They can never bore me. I love these animals to death. They can do no wrong in my eyes, but not everybody's like me. Not everybody's like us. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, it's a very common question I get when I've been selling leopard geckos. A lot of people will be like, how's its temperament? And I get I say quite a bit. How is it both being handled, which I think is, you know, a pretty legitimate question too. So at least on the pet keeper side, that's probably the number one thing. I don't know about the number one, but one of the top things that they care about, right, is how well these animals are handled. Also, but the look of it too. But if they can kind of find one that has that look and the handleability or the behavior part, then you're solid. And especially more on the pet keeper side, they're not really into all the high-end genes, right? They'll see a normal and it's like triple het for this, and they don't understand why it's so much more expensive, right? So at least on the pet level, if you can, you know, get in that market of producing something beautiful but also behavior, then you're well sought out of. So
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to catfish anybody. You know what I mean? I don't want to sell somebody a beautiful baby that turns into an ugly brown douchebag. You know what I mean? A year later, like that's another thing too. So like I'm keeping that in mind. I'm trying to cater to breeders and pet keepers alike, but obviously with my current budget and most of the collection I have and the breeders that I have, it's going to be mostly pet keepers that are going to be buying my animals for a while, and I understand that. It's just where it's my starting point. So at the very least, my animals are going to be visually stunning. You know, they're going to pass the grandma test, as some would say.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's good. And, you know, I don't I'm in a lot of, you know, I follow a lot of pet keeper groups because I want to know what people are talking about. I want to know what people care about. Not just like I listen to breeder podcasts all the time. I know what breeders care about. I know what they're talking about. I know what they're concerned about. I also want to know what pet keepers care about. I want to know what problems they're having on a day-to-day basis. That's another thing too. I'm always sleuthing in these groups. Like, what are people doing?
That's really smart. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what do people care about? What are they looking for? Like, what breeds are they actually buying? What are they showing off to their friends? You know what I mean? And what problem are they running into? Why is their ball python not eating today? You know what I mean? So I'm always on top of that because there's always something you can learn. Even the most inexperienced people can teach you the most because they're going to show you what not to do. You know what I mean? Or they're going to show you what inexperienced people are dealing with that maybe I can help with. There's a lot to it. Again, I know I'm yammering, but these are things I think about a lot. I research a ton, so I consume a ton of information. So there's just a lot that I'm whirling around in my brain trying to make sense of and trying to learn about. And again, this is from a perspective of a very inexperienced breeder. I'm experienced with animals. I'm experienced with ball pythons and care. I know fuck all about breeding, right? I second clutch only, just got it. So, you know, I'm learning as I go, and there's no such thing as consuming too much information, you know, on it. I think, and it's always going to be changing, and I always want to be learning as I go. So I'm sorry. I think you might have asked another question that I did not address, but I don't remember what it was.
I'm trying to think. I mean, one of them that I had, I don't think I've asked it yet, is what's your plan on marketing yourself and letting other people know that this is what you're targeting for breeding? Are you doing shows? Or are you letting people know out on YouTube, like in-person vending shows, or is it mainly online? Like, what's your kind of angle there?
Yeah. So I was able to reach out to my local market for rehoming the entirety of the last clutch. So I was very lucky there. But it's probably going to be a while before I can realistically do a show. I don't know if I will have the volume for years to come. So that's the thing. But I do have my YouTube channel. Unfortunately, like I did just move, and I'm planning for a wedding as well in a few months. So it's a busy year. It's a busy few months. So right now, the social media, I have an Instagram, I have a YouTube. It's slow going, and I don't have a ton of animals to show off yet. So my plan is to be present, to, be on platforms maybe like this, to say, people, I'm here, this is my name, this is my face, this is what I'm doing. And, to put the information out there so that if somebody looks me up, they can at least see what I'm about and what I'm doing. And if that matters to them, great. Then maybe I'm the breeder for them. Maybe I have the animals for them. But I definitely plan to put a lot of dedication into the YouTube channel and the Instagram just to keep up with my presence. And probably Rumble too. I think I'm going to be using Rumble a lot. I mean, YouTube has kind of become problematic in a lot of ways. So I have no interest in TikTok. I know that that's probably unwise in modern day. And call me old fashioned, I'm 34 years old. I don't like spending a lot of time on social media. It's not healthy. And I'm very aware of my health. I kind of have to be. So I do what I need to do, and I should do a little bit more. I'm also super busy right now, but that's my plan, is to kind of, put some love into the Instagram and the YouTube to at least be findable. Let people know I'm here, and hopefully enough people will see me that I'm able to rehome my animals with people that will love them, and they'll understand where they came from and where I'm coming from, and they'll know they can ask me questions, and that I'm somebody that I may not be big. I may not have a ton of money and a ton of resources and everything, but I'm reputable. I'm not going to scam you. I'm not going to be dishonest. I'm going to make sure that the animal that I give to you is healthy and in good physical condition, that they're eating, and that, I will be able to describe every aspect of that snake's personality and how it's going to adapt to the environment that they're going to put it in. That sort of thing.
Yeah, honesty is a huge thing. I mean, it's obvious, but people are not honest in this hobby, as sad and as, shameful as it is. So you can have all the money in the world, have the best collection, but if you are dishonest or, steal from other people, it's going to end badly, right? So, I mean, that's an unfortunate case. Not trying not to be the dead horse here, but I think we all understand kind of where I'm getting at. Like, it sounds obvious, but it's sadly not, though, So it is important that we are honest and hold ourselves up to the highest morality, I guess, that we can in that sense.
This is the problem with being human. Humans are like, survival dictates that you be selfish, right? Survival dictates that you work for yourself and not for others. And it's just like, there's going to be terrible people in all industries, in all places. And, you always kind of got to hold other people at arm's length until you see what kind of person they are.
Right.
There's nobody nowhere doing anything is protected from a bad person, because there's honestly more bad people than there are good people. It's just human nature.
Yeah, unfortunately. And this industry is really, I mean, we've been in it about this. We've had the pet for a long time, Lucy, but you've kind of been in the breeding for a short amount of time, same as me. But this community is pretty welcoming from that sense. I've made a whole lot of friends and joining a lot of Patreon groups. Are you in any Patreon groups or reptile groups? You spoke about the Facebook, but I didn't know about any breeder groups.
I plan to. That was one of the next steps I was going to take,
Cool.
especially after we stop spending money on the wedding, is I want to join a few Patreons and get more involved, even more so. Again, it's a slow burn, but I want to kind of keep integrating. I would like to meet more people. I was very fortunate to be able to meet Jessica Hare through her podcast, and Chris Eaton through his podcast. And I've tried to form a positive relationship with all of the breeders that I've bought from, and as well as anybody who has bought from me, of course. But I'm trying to, get more involved, more aware, that people know who I am, and I want to get to know other people. So yeah, I plan to, probably by the end of this year, I will have joined a few podcasts. I was thinking about actually joining the Trap Talk podcast.
Oh yeah.
From the way that they talk, it seems like a good idea. Yeah.
No, it's great. The biggest thing is building connections. It's not so much, I don't believe it's so much what you know, it's who you know. And I've kind of really gotten that throughout my life. I think that's the reason why I am where I am today. Not so much like the hard work and all that. It's more who you know. It's the connections. It's the networking. It's so important,
Yeah.
especially when most of this is, I would say, online, right? When you're new and getting into it and getting your name out there, it's a lot of it's online and some in person, going to the shows and meeting people. But again, the majority of the day to day is online. So I think joining the Patreon groups would be super beneficial in getting your name out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a solid idea for sure.
Yeah. So shout out the Trap Talk Patreon. Highly recommend. I've been in since last fall, and it brought on this opportunity for me. So can't thank MJ enough for that. But if any listeners who are in who aren't in that Patreon, I highly recommend. It's been really, like I said, beneficial for me, and it's a big one with a lot of different species, not just ball python. So I kind of see what the chondro people are doing, and it's all learning, right? That we both kind of talked about. You love learning. This is a lifelong process. So I think that's pretty beneficial. So
yeah, for sure. And I don't know that I will ever personally keep a different kind of reptile, but I'm definitely like curious as to I played around with the idea of a few different species back in the day, especially back when I was working at Nerd and I was surrounded by them. You know, it was very tempting. But I would like to, like you said, like see what other people are doing, what progress they're making, what they're learning, and how they're keeping other animals and stuff. Because I think that they all probably, like, you could probably learn something about all pythons by observing various species and not just your own. You know what I mean? Or all snakes or lizards or whatever it is that it's your thing. Yeah, for sure. But I honestly currently don't consume a lot of content that is, sort of centered around other species, because I'm just so focused on learning about this one because I'm so involved in it. I'm trying to do so much with it. So I don't really get that chance that often.
And you spoke about in the beginning, you just brought it up now, but I really want to learn or hear more about your experience with Nerd and with Kevin. It's super fascinating. I mean, I think recently, I think he was on it with Chris. He was kind of down on the ball python market. So it obviously didn't have that much effect on you, but I'm sure there's a lot of stories you can tell. But yeah, tell us like a little bit about that. I'm super interested in hearing.
So I had my dad's wife, they've been together a very long time, and she had known Kevin since they were very young. She lived right across the street from New England Reptile. So obviously when they started dating, I think I was like 13 at the time, maybe. When they started dating, I was always going there because it was right there. So I, visited a lot. And back then the reptile or the ball python market was doing great. A lot of things, I understand that a lot of things have changed and people's preferences have changed, and the way that Nerd, operates has changed a little bit. And Kevin's always been under pressure for sure. Like he was one of the, OGs, like he's always kind of been in the public eye as far as reptiles go. And there's not a lot of people that, got as big as he did back then. So he'd always kind of felt the pressure. But he's still in, with the incredible amount of animals he was managing and, the difficulty with like employees and stuff. And like a lot of different people came and went there. It had a high turnover rate because like you said, like a lot of people, he got stolen from a lot, like a lot of sketchy individuals went through there, people who were junkies that he had no idea. Like I knew some of them. So like a lot of people had betrayed him over the years, and he's talked about this before too. It used to be very cutthroat back in the day, but he still managed to kind of stay on top and be kind of a revolutionary as far as like producing the latest and greatest morphs and everything. But I think as of recently, and I know that he's kind of shifting his focus to other things, which I understand. He's been doing ball pythons a very long time. As far as being down on the market, I think probably like everybody says, it's a normal fluctuation, but I think it's literally physically impossible for the market to actually be getting worse. Now, if you compare it to COVID, obviously, like, when people had nothing better to do but like have money they didn't know what to spend it on and sit at home and do nothing, obviously something that would make at the time a quick buck like breeding ball python seemed very appealing. It goes without saying what caused that. So you saw this abnormal spike during that time. And being like, COVID had nothing to do with me starting breeding too. I didn't really have interest in starting it up during COVID. It was actually after the fact that I had, after things had settled down, that I got into the idea. And again, it was because my son wanted a snake, and I always wanted to do it. But Yeah, it's
'Cause
impossible for the.
he said that the market was dead. I mean, that's kind of how
So
severe he was.
let me tell you why. Unfortunately, and it's Kevin has a huge heart. He has a huge heart. He loves animals more than anything. He's very uncomfortable with people. Like he's one of those people, bless his heart. Like he would get so much social anxiety, he'd be in the midst of a conversation and he would run out of the room. Like because he was so anxious and he didn't know how to deal with it. He didn't have a lot of coping mechanisms. Like he's that kind of person. He loves animals, not great with people. And we all probably know people like that. I used to be like that when I was younger. I didn't know how to talk to people. He has crippling social anxiety and he has a lot of strange ways of dealing with it. So and because of that too, like having a positive online presence is difficult. So sometimes, and I see it all the time in the comments, things don't come across online the right way. People shit all over Kevin for a lot of things that they do because they don't know him, they don't understand him, so a lot of things look bad. What people don't understand, like especially when it comes to like any of the medical stuff he does, he has had so much hands-on experience with rehabilitation. Like so many veterinarians and experts and everything have come through there and taught him how to do things. He has had so much hands-on experience with reptiles. It's ridiculous. He's way better at dealing with a reptile health issue than your typical conventional veterinarian, which are highly undertrained in reptiles. It's a very small part, as you know, a very small part of veterinary training, reptiles. Their toolbox is so small as to what they can do, and they're more likely to do more harm than good because they know so little about what to do with various reptile issues. They're going to do what puts money in their pocket, right? They're going to give you an antibiotic, even if an antibiotic won't do anything. But anyway, but Kevin actually knows how to cure an issue, how to treat an issue long term, how to perform a surgery. Now he has done, his mistake is putting it online without enough information or enough kind of prerequisites and like explanation. And again, that's his social thing. He doesn't understand like how impactful that is and how negatively it's perceived and how much explaining he would actually have to do to put people's mind at ease, because people think vets are gods. Only vets can understand anything medical about animals, right? Only vets, even though, like, again, I don't think I'd mentioned this yet on this podcast. I was going to go into the veterinary industry, and because of some things that I had learned, I decided not to. And that's not to say there aren't terrific vets. There absolutely are. It's an industry problem. It's not an individual veterinarian problem. It's a schooling industry funding problem. That it's like corporate greed. It's one of those things. But anyway, so because Kevin had put a lot of things online that looked very negative and that were very shocking, right? And back in the day in YouTube, that's how you got views. You were shocking. That was just what people did. But he doesn't do that anymore. He's, kind of grown out of that, and he's learned. He got a very bad reputation. We'll put it that way. We'll summarize it with that. I know it's a very long-winded way to say he got a bad reputation. It's a very negative perception. He was doing a lot of things that were very old-fashioned, very traditional, a lot of things that people nowadays do not agree with. And I understand that. I understand that we all have to change and evolve, and improvements should be made. He actually is now. He's building all of these new enclosures. He's reducing the number of animals he had. He's making enormous changes to the way he's keeping things to keep up with the modern information and, keep up with the times and everything. And he's shifting to different species rather than ball pythons, but everything there is improving. He's always improving. Because he cares a lot, and he uses the best information he has to make those improvements and to try to fix things and to try to make things better and do the best he can by his animals. And if he's doing something wrong, it's not because he's trying to hurt anything. It's because he doesn't understand yet that something could be going wrong or something, or that the information that he had is not good. So anywho, I think that that's why he thinks ball pythons are dead. I think people are not buying from him anymore because of his online perception, and people live by the internet. People live by social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And when all people are seeing are all of these horrible things that, Kevin has done over the years, or these things that they don't agree with, or these things that are demonized, obviously that's going to affect his bottom line. That's going to affect his sales and his perception of the market. And people are very cruel. People are very mean to him. And it's not to say that he hasn't made mistakes or he hasn't done things that are very negative in the public eye. Everybody makes mistakes, but that's what happens when your entire life is online and everybody is watching every move that you make. They're going to see some fucked up shit.
Yeah. I mean? Like I've seen a lot of videos where he has like animals bite him for, is that for like education or like, what's his, I mean, I know, like I've seen think
Oh my
recently
God.
it was a hognose or something, and the hand looks so like I was like, why? I don't understand the reasoning for this, and I feel bad because it's in pain, right? I mean, it looks bad to me.
Oh yeah, no, he's bananas. He's bananas. I look at his videos sometimes and I'm like, Kevin, what the hell are you doing? But because I kind of have an understanding of where he comes from, where he thinks
Yeah.
he's not shitting you when he's saying, I'm doing this for learning purposes. Let's see what happens. Like nobody else is gonna do this, so I'm gonna take the risk and I'm gonna do this and show people what happens so they know. Worst case scenario. And he's explained this in the videos. And I'm like, okay, I still wouldn't. It's still bananas, but okay, you know what? It's your body, you know, you do what you want to do. I, I have a lot of like, again, I watch videos of his all the time and I'm just like, oh, Kevin, no.
Yeah, those I just don't understand. I don't quite. I'm trying to because I like to learn both sides of everything and try to, understand where people are coming from, right? But those I just don't. The biting.
Yeah, no, he does dumb stuff, but he does it with the best intentions, and that's like I know that that's a cop out, but it's like the best way to describe it. It's the best intentions. Sure. He doesn't have this like social understanding of how people are going to perceive it. He doesn't think of that. He thinks of what can I learn from doing this. What's the next thing I can do with my animals? Because I want to know everything about these animals, and that's all he's operating on. He's very simple in that way. You know what I mean? That's really what he says is his intent. That's really his intent, and he may not always have a great explanation, but that's how he operates.
Okay.
He's not like you and I.
No, fair. I mean, I don't know anything really about him. I mean, I've heard of New England Reptile Distributors, and then just recently when he was, I think, on with Chris Eaton, I believe, talking about the market, but I really don't have much of an understanding. I know he's in like an OG. That's about all I know, and works with a lot of species, but that's pretty much it. So I don't know him at all personally, or never talked to him. So
yeah, he did a lot of things very much in the traditional old-fashioned way, and he did it for a little too long. And he obviously also he didn't spend as much time online like looking at what everybody else was doing like everybody else was. He wasn't like addicted to social media like everybody else was. So like when things changed, when perceptions changed, when what people wanted and what people cared about changed, he didn't know. Like he wasn't on top of it. He's in his facility all day, every day, working with his animals and obviously trying to manage his employees, which is also very stressful for him. But he's got so much other crap occupying his time and mental energy. Like you have no idea. He had way too many animals for such a long time because he used to do rescue. Like we would the local fish and game and kind of the wildlife. What do you call it when you call animal control? And he worked with animal control a lot. So whenever somebody found an animal out of place or something was released or somebody was rehoming something, people dropped off animals at Nerd all the time. I was there during this time. I did a lot of the rescue and rehab with them. And there were constantly animals dropped off, and he had a bleeding heart, so he always wanted to save them. He always wanted to help them. He always wanted to make space for them, and they got to be way too much. So he's always had a lot to manage. He's got way more bills than, he can probably manage. And he's got, he needs a lot of staff because it's a lot of animals. Like we used to do a minimum 10-hour shifts there in order to just get like one room or one section of a room done in a day. Wow. So it's overwhelming there. And people like, you can go there and see like it's way more organized now. He's made a lot of improvements. But you can go to the breeding facility. It's open to the public. You can schedule a tour and see what if you live in the area. Obviously, I know not everybody's here in New Hampshire, but
yeah, interesting. Huh? Yeah. What was your favorite species like to work with there?
I loved the bearded dragons, and I didn't get to work with the retics a lot because there were a lot of very large snakes, and I could handle them by myself. But I loved the retics whenever somebody was interacting with them. Or like, I would be able to help with some kind of cleaning or something. I also really like the anacondas. That was really cool. I have an affection for big snakes, especially big intelligent snakes, and the monitors. Whenever I got to interact with the monitors, that was really cool. I'm fascinated with intelligent animals, interactive intelligent animals, which it's like funny that like I love ball pythons so much because they don't show as many obvious outward signs of intelligence as other, but
it's challenging. It's a challenge, so just look at it like that. But I like the monitors a lot too. I would like to get someday. The green tree, or the tree ones, the small
Green
guys.
Demon?
Yeah, I like the. Yeah, I forgot what the recipe. I like the blue ones, but yeah, I think they have the green, blue, and I see the black ones. But I do have to do a lot more research for them. So that's years and years.
Yeah.
But
beautiful, beautiful animals. I'll never be able to own them because I'll never be able to provide like an adequate home for them. But I'll admire them from afar. They're lovely.
They're cool. A lot of the groups I'm in, some people have them and they're training them to come up on their hands and their arms, and it's just like kind of like a fascinating, and being able to build that personal connection with an animal.
Yeah.
I think most people are in the hobby with. So
yeah, it's interesting too, like, because I used to have ferrets, which are, you know, second only to dogs in social activity and like how much they love to be around people and the kind of relationship that they form with you. And to sort of feel that love bond. And then like, I mean, I had Lucy all the while, but then to have only the only animals I have are these ball pythons. To an animal where you have to earn any kind of relationship with it, especially any kind of positive relationship. You know, you have to like earn the right to not scare the crap out of them in their presence, right? You have to earn the right to get them to eat on a regular basis. Like, whereas, you know, with a ferret, like love and affection just kind of comes naturally. It just is. So, and I've always preferred more social loving animals. And yet somehow I'm just like, so like into these ball pythons. I can't explain it.
Yeah. No, it's hard. I think building that connection gives us. I mean, that's what got me into loving animals, anyways. Right? Is the connection that you can build with them, and knowing that they're a challenge, anyways, and being able to figure them out or unlock the key, so to speak, is so much not only enriching to them, but really more enriching to us, that we can kind of figure them out and make their positive, give their world a positive sort of light.
For sure. And it's so rewarding when you get somewhere with it, you know, where a snake finally stops like recoiling in your presence, or you can finally like you put your hand in front of them and they crawl onto it. Like that's you worked so hard for that, you know, and you worked for years for that maybe, and it's, you know, it finally happens, and it's a pretty big deal. It feels, being able to work with these animals, especially with the behavior work I'm trying to do and the kind of animals I'm trying to produce, it's part of my goal. So I'm doing it all the time and I get to see them progress. And obviously, the younger they are, the faster they progress, the easier it is, the more malleable they are. But to see how they change and like what techniques I'm doing that are working and which are just making it worse or having no effect at all. So it's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm never producing offspring, so you know this is like the next best thing. Like you know, like human offspring.
Oh yes, yep. Yep, and they do have their own personality. I've kind of noticed that in my own collection. I mean, I have like probably, I would say 40 now, and there's definitely some where I open it up and they're willing to come out, and others maybe not so much. So it's different than like a dog or cat for sure, but that's most of my experience, right? And behavior is with dog and cat, with veterinarian medicine essentially. But I can tell in my own sort of collection that there are at least groups of personalities. It's hard on that, I think, scale to know, very individual like, and I don't know if you ever could on that scale, but I do notice that there are some groups that are showing very similar signs that you kind of described throughout the podcast tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully somebody will see this, like, you know, breeder or pet keeper or whatever, and they'll like kind of observe their animal a little bit differently, you know, and kind of like pay a little bit more attention to subtle things, because ball pythons are subtle. They don't give you a lot of cues for what they're thinking, right? There's very few communications they can give you. So, but it's there. If you look for it, it's there. They're always trying to they're always telling you something.
Right. And that's what after this, I'm gonna take that into more account as I've been sitting here kind of listening. Okay. And which individuals, and trying to make them a little more adaptable maybe, and so I think it'll be fun.
I think you'll probably appreciate Lori Torini's videos. She talks a lot about the choice-based handling, so that was kind of like I had used some of what I had learned in the past, you know, in the years that I'd had Lucy and everything, and a combination of some of the stuff that she talked about as to how to be more pleasant when it comes to handling and how to be less intimidating, and give the snake a little bit more autonomy. And she's right in a lot of ways. Like when you make them feel like it's up to them, the interaction, they're much more willing to do it when it's not forced on them. They get much more comfortable much faster. I do this weird thing, and most people are probably gonna think this is dumb, but one of the ways that I should I tell them that I'm going to pick them up or I'm going to handle them in some way or I want to get them to relax is I actually massage them a little bit. And it actually seems to do something. Like, I know it sounds weird because they don't have any like positive receptors for touch. They're not supposed to associate touch with anything good. But I actually like go along their spine and massage the muscles along their spine, and they get noticeably more relaxed when I do that. Noticeably. Like, and I test it with all of my snakes. Even the one that's nervous, that's always balled up, I do it with her, and she just goes limp. She's like, you can feel a difference when you pick up a snake and they're tense and stiff versus when they're soft and supple and kind of loose and hanging. It always relaxes them. So more work needs to be done, but there might be something there as to the whole massaging thing.
Is it a specific area in the spine, or do you just start at the top and go down, or is it just random? Does it matter where it's at?
So from what I've heard, and it seems to make a lot of sense and what I've researched, the tail and the head are the most sensitive areas to the snake, because usually if they're going to be eaten or grabbed, it's probably going to be by the tail or the head. So I start with the middle of the body, which is the most neutral to them, the least scary. So I start with the middle of the body, and then if I'm going to go toward the head, I go from, this is how I teach snakes not to be head shy. I start with the center, and then I slowly move up toward the head, so they know it's coming, and they're usually much less reactive because of that, or down toward the tail. And usually when I put them back in their tub, I always let them crawl in on their own. I don't just plop them in. I'm always touching them as they go into the tub. I'm always rubbing the spine and making sure that I touch every part of their body. And it does over time desensitize them to a degree. So they're less sensitive and freaked out about that touch because it's not new. They know nothing bad. Eventually they learn nothing bad is going to happen when I'm doing this.
Right.
So I do work on desensitization, but for some reason, the massage, it seems to like, they get more comfortable with being picked up if I do that first, or they get more comfortable with just me holding them. If they were otherwise tense, they relax. So I could be crazy. Like, it could be something else that I don't know or understand, but that's what I've seen. So I'm kind of going with it.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. I'm gonna start doing that on my own and see if I can notice a difference. So
yeah,
interesting.
I mean, who doesn't like to have their back muscles massaged? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
Put them like that, yeah.
For sure. We were kind of taught like in school to put like a few fingers and kind of go in like a clockwise sort of motion. So be interesting to do if you do different pressure points or different types of massages, if that will elicit a different response. Probably too difficult to tell that, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, I noticed on the sides that's closer to their belly, the actual sides of their body, they're more ticklish, probably not ticklish, sensitive. So they react more like they jerk their body away. Whereas on top of the spine, the muscles that align right along the side of the spine, they have much less reaction. So it's less sensitive. So I kind of focus more of my attention there because it seems to be what they react least to.
Yeah. Probably more muscle there. So I'm sure there's less nerves than maybe as you get kind of over the ribs. There's probably there's less muscle, less meat kind of there. So I'm assuming that's why they're more kind of sensitive as you go under them. But I don't know anatomy. Yeah. Didn't really learn any anatomy in vet school about snakes, so I'm sure. Species. So yeah, looking at the chat here, we're kind of coming up about over an hour and a half. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and I'll get to them here a little bit as we're kind of wrapping things up. But what would you say your goal, or what would you like to go have in, say, 5 years? 5-year goal and like a 10-year goal for the business and going forward?
So so there's a few fronts there. On the behavior side, I hope to have obviously the real work is done when I've produced offspring and those offspring have produced offspring. So obviously I have only first generation. It might take multiple generations to see genuine noticeable differences in inherent behavior right out of the egg. So I'm hoping to have more data there to know how if I'm actually wasting my time or not. But as far as morphs go, I hope to have all of the breeders that I'm going to need for my 10-year plan. So unfortunately, I do have snakes that are going to take multiple generations to produce the morph combos that I actually want. But I want to be able to at least have visual monarchs. Hopefully I will have successfully bred those 2 hets that I have, a good, healthy variety of pieds, because I mean, pieds always pass the grandma test. So, and then the more, interesting morphs you can get into pieds. But there's a lot of different things that I want to do with it that I haven't seen done before. Especially, and with Candino, I also want to do something I'd never seen done before. I don't know if I should say what it is, but again, that's way off in the future. So I'm basically, it's hard. Like, I know my immediate plan and I know where I want to be in 10 years. And then there's a kind of filling in the blank in the middle that I have to kind of see as I go, because my lack of experience in breeding, I kind of have to learn as I go. I know what I want to make. I know it's going to take time to get there. Basically.
Okay.
Hopefully though, hopefully at least I'm regularly producing a few clutches a year, having no problem selling them because the babies are healthy and visually beautiful and desirable in some way. And hopefully I was going to say before too, that I don't think that there's anything wrong with the future of the market. If you look in the grand scale of number of people that own reptiles versus mammals, and then even less so people who own snakes and pythons versus mammals, it's an incredibly small percentage, which means that it can only grow. And social media, much as I hate it, is doing wonders for that. People are sharing their snakes on TikTok, and that means that we are spreading the word, and we're spreading it like wildfire. Millions and millions and millions and millions of people are going to learn about these snakes that never knew they existed. Like, you mean to tell me, I'll tell Kevin to his face, you mean to tell me that millions of people are going to discover these snakes and none of them are going to buy them? What?
Yeah.
It's physically impossible for this. And they're appealing. They're appealing for a reason. They're beautiful. They're easy to care for. They're long lived. They're low maintenance. There's no reason at all that popularity for them is not going to grow.
And since getting into this, I've heard that it's kind of like a pyramid, not so much a scheme, although I've heard people kind of relate it to that, but so much a pyramid, right? Where the success kind of starts out at the bottom, right? People who are just getting in the pet side. So I think there's going to be an obvious need for that going forward for you and I. We're just getting into this. And now how can we draw sort of the next generation of keepers or maybe potential breeders if they want to, that kind of can then feed through so that we're all successful. If we're all I think there's a lot about that too, on people not maybe sharing ideas or anything like that. But overall, I think we do wish other people success, right? Because if we're successful, others are going to be successful. So
exactly, yeah, we're not really in competition. We all help each other. Every sale, every time somebody breeds or shares their animal online, it helps all of us. It's nobody's really competing with each other anymore. And I know that that's the way things used to be 20 years ago. It's not the case anymore. There's more than enough. They haven't all, come to our attention yet, but there's more than enough homes for the animals that we are producing. I do think that some animals are produced a little bit too much. I think there's probably too many people, willy-nilly producing normals. There's probably too many people making hundreds of clutches a year. I understand you have a bottom line. I understand it's profitable. I know that you have a lot of animals. I know you have a lot of overhead. Some of you have staff to pay. I get it. And you want to keep growing your business and making more money. These animals live for 30 to 40 years. Okay. And we can't pray that they all be neglected and die. We want them all to live, which means that there are snakes that were first produced when breeding became popular that are still alive, which means that the number of existing ball pythons only grows. So be selective. Be selective, put them in good homes, spread the word, And if you are a pet keeper and you bought a ball python and it's not what you thought, please continue to take optimal care of it. And if you must rehome it, I can't tell you how many times throughout Lucy's life that I was I'm bored, I'm tired, and have money. I'm not as into this as I was, and I just pushed through it. And then a few months later, I was like, I'm so happy to have her. You will feel that way. You will feel that maybe you don't want this animal anymore. Maybe it's just not worth your time or whatever. They eat once or twice a week. When they're adults, even less often. They poop about as often as that. They borderline take care of themselves. You can go away on vacation for a week if you give them fresh water and a feeding beforehand, and they'll be fine. You don't even need to pay for a sitter. Just keep your snakes. And if you must rehome them, make sure that it is a home that will love them as much as they possibly can and that have the resources to care for them.
Yeah.
It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought that these snakes live so long and are so often rehomed or pass away of neglect. It's something that needs to be addressed, I think.
For sure. Yeah, there's been kind of talks about that in some of my groups too. Obviously, you don't want somebody coming in and regulating how many clutches you do. And at least the breeders that I know are kind of reflecting back on the prior year of the market being a little bit down and maybe not producing as many clutches to therefore limit the number. I think a big part of that too are these really big ones that just make thousands of clutches of bells, thousands of clutches or pides. I mean, that makes it difficult when you're making that many on that level, when all the starter people are trying to get in and making similar stuff. And when they're struggling, then we all struggle, right? Because some people are buying from the ones that are making thousands of the same thing. So
Exactly.
that's my, I mean, it's not the end all be all, that's my personal thought on it. So, but yeah, I don't see any questions yet. Was there anything that I didn't ask on that you wanted to talk about?
I think I have talked people's ear off quite enough. I mean, if somebody wants to know something, I mean, by all means, they can reach out to me, or if they have a question here, that's fine. But I think I've consumed, it's almost been 2 hours. I've consumed so much of your time.
Yeah, no problem. No, I've learned so much, and so much of that I'm going to take into my own collection and kind of reflect back and see how I can improve things to make their lives better. So how can people reach out to you or look you up on social media?
Yeah. So I do have a MORPH market. There's no animals on it yet. Some of these ones from this clutch are going to go up there. Again, it's just a numbers thing. And I have a YouTube channel. I have an Instagram, so I can be found there. Unfortunately, the Instagram is acacia.ball.pythons because I'm an idiot. And I made, before I started producing animals, I made an Instagram account with just Acacia ball pythons, you know, all one word, no dots or anything. And I didn't know if you don't post for a certain amount of time, they delete it. So, and I couldn't remake it with the same name. So, yeah, that was aggravating. But anyway, so it's acacia.ball.pythons on Instagram. And then same on MORPH market, Acacia ball pythons. If you search me on Google, I should just come up. And my email is acaciaballpythons@gmail.com.
Okay.
So, should be pretty easy to contact.
Perfect. Awesome. I think I'm gonna incorporate something new. I saw this on another podcast and I'm gonna incorporate it. But what questions? Put down a question that I will ask the next guest at the end of the podcast. I've seen it on another reptile podcast. And I thought it was a really cool idea, so I'm gonna steal it and do it. So yeah, I'll write it down here. I'll give you a little think since it's kind of random, but yeah.
So you want me to give you a question to ask the next guest?
Yep.
Okay. I guess something relevant to me. Ask them how they feel about the idea of people breeding for behavior.
Okay.
You know, and all the things that go with that. So stress management, feeding, handleability, you know, adaptability to their environment. You know, see how they feel about that.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I saw that and I thought it was a really cool idea to kind of like pass it along. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. So with that, I think we're good to go. Again, thank you so much for doing this last minute. I really, really appreciate that. And it's been a great conversation. Got to know you a little bit more, your background, your history, what you're wanting to do coming forward in the next several years. So I'm really, really excited to see that and hope that you're able to produce the combos that you want with also behavior aspect of it, because I think it's going to be really, really important. Nobody else that at least I know of it is doing that. I know it can be really appealing for a lot of people out there. So I think what you're doing is great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody thinks so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm going to put you backstage and we'll kind of finish up here quick, and then I will say goodnight to everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Yeah. Bye, Acacia. All right, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around and for hanging out tonight. Hope you guys learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I'm going to take a lot of that information to my own collection to make it better and talk to other people about it and see what they think. So I'm trying to see if we got any more questions or anything. Hold up. Seeing that there's none. All right. And for next week, we're going to have Smug Bugs on, I believe. They are a bioactive company. They also breed crested geckos. And I'm going to have them hopefully build a bioactive enclosure live on the channel. So I think that's going to be awesome. So that's in tune for next week. So All right. Thank you all and good night.